Welcome to The Point of View. This is your favorite current affairs show on television. Here on The Point of View, we pick the right topics, get the right guests, ask them relevant questions on issues that matter to you. Well, we're live tonight on a very important topic. Is Ghana losing its competitiveness in terms of manufacturing? Are companies leaving the country in droves? What is behind those departures? We'll be giving you some highlights of economic activity, focusing on some key companies that have left the country, and speaking to key industry people on what really could be the problem. Stay with us. Welcome back. So tonight we're looking at whether Ghana's lack of competitiveness is leading to multinationals opting out. One of the newspapers, the Herald, had a very interesting front page. It said Societe Generale, others declare Ghana unprofitable as they leave Ghana. So in the story, they listed about 8 companies. They listed Glovo, they listed Nivea, Jumia Foods, they listed Lipton, Dark and Lovely, Bet365, as well as Game and Big and Societe Generale, as all leaving the country within the past 2 years because of a difficult economic activity. Now, what they did was they quoted high taxes, mass unemployment, inadequate electricity supply, and low per capita income, among other factors influencing the departure of these companies. So what I want to do is, there are 2 ways you can analyze an economy. You can do a macro analysis, which will give you the figures for everybody, aggregates, or you can also do a micro analysis. I'm going to do both this evening. I'll start with showing you a few charts that tell the story of Ghana's economy and how it's behaving. Then we'll do specific case studies of these 7 to 8 companies, and then we'll speak to industry people. So I'm going to show you 7 charts. The first one is called the Real Composite Index of Economic Activity. Now, that chart starts from January 2022 all the way to January 2024. So it shows you the past couple of years. And you notice it dips and then begins to rise, peaks and dips again. That's basically telling you that the overall index, all economic activity put together, now take note of the 0 in the middle. So the rate of growth of this composite index, if it's below 0, it means that on aggregate, we're growing below 0%. Now, in 2022, it started at 5%, and then by January 2023, it was below 0. So that's pretty serious, right? And then it rises to 0 again, third quarter of 2023, and then it peaks around the fourth quarter of 2023. But if you look at the right side of that chart, it's dipped again. It's dipped again. So what we're seeing is that for January 2024 up till now, the real composite index of economic activity growth has come back down. It was around 3.5%, but even though it's above 0, it started reducing again. So that's a challenge, right? As of January, it's 3.5%. The other chart to look at is retail sales and domestic VAT collection. So essentially, if you want to know how companies are doing, how well are they selling? Because sales is basically the first top line, which then you add costs and things to get to your bottom line, which could be profit. Now, the blue line in the middle of, or at the bottom of that chart, is retail sales, how much people are buying. You notice it's a very flat line. So apart from the end of 2022, where you have a slight inch up, it's been very, very, very flat. So what that is telling you is that sales are not going up. Sales are very flat. People are not buying. So when you go to Makola and people say they are not buying, it's because of that. They are not buying. But notice the orange chart. On that same chart, the orange line is going up. So it simply tells you that the government is taxing companies at a rate which is higher than companies are selling. That's basically what it is. So the gap between sales and tax, and the fact that the slope of tax is steeper than that of sales, tells you that companies may not be selling that much, but government is taxing either through sales tax, VAT, or other kinds of tax. So that chart tells you that there's a problem. So this is domestic VAT collection is the orange line. Although it's dipped, again, very similar to the real CEI growth. It dipped at the end of 2023 and it's been coming down since. It means that government isn't able to collect that much tax. So that's the orange line in that chart. The other chart I'll show you are just three quick charts. Port activity. Port activity is pretty interesting. Ghana is an import-dependent economy. So if you see the zigzaggy nature of the port activity, it doesn't tell you much. But the general slope up until January last year is downwards. It started picking up from January, but then it's become vacillating. So port activity, even though it's trending upwards, isn't doing that great. What does that mean? Imports are reducing. Now that could be good if we had local substitutes being manufactured, but that could also be bad for government revenues, right? Because 40% of government revenues is from import duties. So if you have port activity flattening out, it's not a good sign for an economy. Some people think it's because Togo has a free port. Things are much cheaper coming through there. And don't forget, some of Ghana's traffic doesn't end up in Ghana. Burkina Faso, Niger, Mali, lots of landlocked countries, they can either use Tema or Togo. So port activity is another indicator of what things are, how things are going in an economy. So it's not a very positive sign. So even before looking at any company, these indicators should give you a sense of the challenge. Now, cement sales are very important for the construction industry. So typically, if you look at the industrial growth, you have manufacturing, and then you have construction industry and other sectors within there. Cement sales are pointing downwards. Again, it's risen slightly middle of 2023, but that should tell you that generally, either cement is too expensive, people are not reporting how much cement they buy, or the rate of growth of the construction industry is not that good. And this is, by the way, is Bank of Ghana data. So cement sales pointing downwards is a sign. Now, before talking to any company, your real composite index of economic growth came to a minimum, started rising, but it's coming down. Your sales are flat of retail products. Your cement sales are pointing downwards. Your port activity is zigzaggy. Let me show you the last chart. Industrial consumption of electricity. Again, most companies use electricity to produce what they produce. So the consumption of power must be in tandem with economic growth. Rises till mid of 2023, comes down to end of 2023, and it's flat. It's actually dipped from January 2024. That could be because of Dumso. But a country that's doing well, companies in the industrial sector will be consuming electricity more. But what you see here tells you a very sad story. And of course, job adverts are also very flat. So in a nutshell, on the macro side, there are hints that the economy is struggling. And this is the real economy. This is the real economy, by the way. All right. Now, let me walk you through a few of the companies that have been mentioned in this story that they are struggling. Now, the most high-profile one recently has been Glovo. So Glovo sent a message to one of its key clients, and that message found its way into the media. And the message simply read that while we recognize the potential of the Ghana market, building a stronger position and achieving profitability would require substantial investment over an extended period. This is why we have decided to redirect our resources towards the other 23 countries where Glovo operates to better serve the millions of customers who use the Glovo app every day. So the suggestion is that Ghana is not doing well for them, other countries are doing better. So they say from 10th May, which is 3 or 4 days from today, they're leaving Ghana. Right? Now, Glovo is a delivery service. Very similar to Jumia Foods, which is the second company in this category. Popular e-commerce platform Jumia Foods, they shut down December last year. Right? They said it was due to what they call an unsustainable market condition. Unsustainable market conditions and economic factors. Now, they also said this closure reflects their difficulties, including a significant 41% loss in the year of departure last year. Now, that loss amounted to $49.8 million. That's almost $50 million. Multiply that by 14. That's like lots of dollars or cedis. And this loss was Q4 2022. $50 million loss. So Jumia Foods is out, right? The other company that's been listed in this category as having left Ghana, in fact, there are two. They are in the beauty and cosmetics sector. Nivea, a skincare brand, and then Dark and Lovely, which is a hair products brand. Now, Nivea discontinued its operations in Ghana December last year, citing high operating costs and taxation as the reason for their departure. High operating costs and taxation as the reason for their departure. Their action was a result of the need to, what they say, streamline their operations. And again, they want to focus on markets where sustainable growth and profitability can be achieved. So this is the point. You don't need to be in every African country physically to sell in those countries. So you can produce in Nigeria, Senegal, Cote d'Ivoire, or wherever. Some even produce in Egypt or South Africa and then ship it. They're basically saying it's better for them to focus their business in countries where it's easier to be profitable than where it's going to cost them. So you've seen the Nivea brand. So Nivea is a skincare brand. They say they're leaving. Now let's talk about Dark and Lovely. It's a hair brand, right? They left Ghana citing the challenges of economic activity, or they call it the challenging economic environment, and rapid changes in the beauty industry. So challenging economic environment. Now that is business speak for, it could be anything. It could be taxes, GRA harassing them. It could be lack of power, or power being expensive. It could be the fact that people are not buying because they are substitutes. It could be the fact that they are smuggling cheaper products into the country. It could be anything. So Dark and Lovely also left Ghana. And by the way, these companies have been in Ghana for years. 1993, 30 years, they're gone. All right. How long have Nivea been in the country? Show me Nivea, just to give that quick sense. Nivea have been in the country for quite a while. They also left last year. All right. When did Nivea come to Ghana? Can you show me the Nivea slide, please? And then I'll show you then Glovo and Jumia Foods have also left Ghana. Bet3, okay, yes, Glovo 2021. So Glovo is not really that long. It's just 3 years old. Jumia Foods also 3 years old. We'll talk to our guest on e-commerce, but the two e-commerce companies are very similar. Let's talk about Game. Very popular South African brand. For those of you who are familiar with the malls, Accra Mall, Achimota Mall, West Hills Mall, Game was very big. They left Ghana in 2022 due to what they call financial challenges, and the closure was part of strategic decision by parent company Massmart to shut down 8 underperforming stores across Africa. So it wasn't only Ghana. They also cited an unsustainable tax burden. In fact, they had been slapped with a tax audit, which meant they had to pay taxes for the tune of, I don't know, 10 years or whatever. They came in 2007, they've left. So that's Game. Then there's Bet365, which is an online betting company, withdrew from Ghana. Again, they cited unsustainable tax burden, regulatory hurdles as reasons for their departure. They left December last year. So there are two categories. Some left December 2022, some left December 2023. So it's like the end of the year, they take a decision and they leave. This one really hurt me. Big pens. We use big pens to write exams. They've been in Ghana for many, many years. They have also decided to leave town. They moved to Ivory Coast. So this is moving your production from Ghana to Ivory Coast. Precisely because Ivory Coast is cheaper and whatever. Economic challenges and reasons for relocation. Now, there are two here I need to qualify. Lipton Tea was sold, the Africa franchise was sold to a company that decided to move all its production to Nigeria. So they haven't shut down. Lipton is still in Ghana, but the tea bag is not produced in Ghana. They've been here since 1994. So again, 30 years, they left, citing, of course, because somebody took them over, the person decided to move their manufacturing to Nigeria. Now you can argue that if Ghana was a good place to sell, or a good place to produce, they would have stayed. But you could also say that because Nigeria is a bigger market, they could just decide that they were streamlining their business and therefore they have moved to Nigeria to sell, but they are still in Ghana producing. Societe Generale is not really part of this. I just mentioned it because it's the big story this week. They entered Ghana 2003, acquiring 51% stake in the then Social Security Bank. They've been actually a very profitable bank. When I did my banking analysis, they were one of the banks that was least exposed to government paper, and therefore the debt exchange didn't affect them that much. They didn't have any haircuts. The decision to move out of Ghana is really an Africa decision. So they're moving out of Cameroon, they're moving out of Tunisia, moving out of Ghana. Indeed, a number of banks have done this. Barclays sold to ABSA. Stanchart left many African countries, but they stayed in Ghana. So they say General may not be part of the narrative of these companies. Now, this is a quick overview of where we are with the micro issues. On the macro side, the numbers are not looking good. Exchange rate, interest rate, inflation, all these things affecting business. On the micro firm side, all these companies will not be here by close of this year. When I come back, I'm going to talk to three people. I'll speak to Humphrey Imdake, doctor, president of AGI. They are the manufacturers. What is going on? I'll speak to Maximus Ametogo. He's an e-commerce specialist. He will explain Jumia. He will explain Bet365. He will explain Glovo. I'll also speak to John Awuni, Food and Beverage Association of Ghana. He will also throw in one or two bits, all on the point of view tonight. When we come back, stay with us. Welcome back. So the point of view tonight is looking at what is going on with particularly manufacturing companies and the view that many of them are leaving Ghana. Let's talk to Dr. Humphrey Imdake, an industrialist and the president of AGI, also an economist kind of guy. Doc, thanks for joining us. Good evening.
Good evening, my brother.
I've just taken viewers through...
Good evening.
Yes, good evening. I've taken viewers through a macro analysis of the economy and given examples of specific companies, multinationals, opting to leave Ghana for one reason or the other. What are your opening thoughts? What is going on with Ghana as a business destination for multinationals?
All right, thank you. I guess we should have the underpinning issues that one, we are in an austerity period and we're still within the IMF program. Once that fundamental is appreciated by listeners and players in the space, the characteristics you've described are not far-fetched. Once that is understood, then now you put out for government's strategic interventions to meet the IMF program, i.e. the debt position of the economy and the strategies in terms of the various programs outlined in the IMF to rake in more resources to service the debt that has been restructured. That basically is giving you the position as we find it. Prior to that, we know there are structural difficulties which still persist. On top of that, you have this current position of debt management and IMF-related issues. As it stands, one will pray that this IMF program will be judiciously followed so that hiccups like the exchange rate factors will be reasonably stable to allow businesses to plan. The cost of power and reliability will also play in and give business a position to plan. But before this, we know we've come from a financial reform state where the financial market failure led to a lot of reforms. It had an impact on businesses on various shapes and various forms. That was before the COVID. And the COVID also came in, and then the Ukraine-related issues that affected supply chain disruptions. So as all stages are going on, a number of companies will fall out, a number will emerge, there will be new opportunities. So you cannot analyze the current situation without looking at the previous impact that had gone on over the period. And if I listen to you carefully, a number of the companies that have checked out have been over a period. So it demonstrates that the impact of the various circumstances or phenomena that happened over the period had impact in this stage. So now, these have aggregated into what you see today. And therefore, all the dynamics that are playing out had a root cause. How do we solve this root cause and move forward? As you are under the IMF, it gives you the opportunity to bring interventions that will be austere and that will be painful to the citizens and the general economy. And that is what we used to argue out a couple of years and months ago. So now we are here. So these are a result of activities in the past and the program we're running, and we need to still tighten our belt to get out of the woods. We are not yet out of the woods, and therefore you are seeing all these dynamics that are playing out. It will go forward a little, it will be deeper before it recovers.
All right.
So what we seek to look out for the incoming government, what are your short-term interventions that will soften, allow us to break even whilst we seek to do the corrective measures?
Doc, generally multinational companies have what do you call it, finance from their home country, so they should have a bigger scope to withstand economic shocks than local countries going through economic crisis generally. So my question to you is, are Ghanaian manufacturers also struggling and closing down, but they've not been it's not been announced because maybe they've not listed, so we don't know? So my point is that if 9 multinationals are leaving, then more locals should have also been closing. So tell us whether this is true, and the only reason we don't know is that you haven't told us yet.
Well, I'll give you a scenario. I live on the Spintex road, and I drive on that road every day. I see shops that I know 3, 4, 5, 7 years, 10 years ago who are no more in existence. You don't see their brands again. The shops are closed, and a new company emerges. And you can count the number that goes on that street alone. It tells you a story. And what is the story? Yes, the economic dynamics, and I've just painted the historical issues that have, or phenomena that have happened. And it will impact on some companies negatively, that will get them to collapse. That is both domestic and international. So whatever is happening to the international companies, same is happening to the local companies. And a drive on the Spintex road, as an example, will give you that scenario clear. So it is also happening on the local market.
But as the fact that the multinational chooses to leave Ghana, so in some cases they are relocating to Cote d'Ivoire, they are still in Africa. In fact, in some cases they are producing for the Ghana market, yes, in the case of say Lipton, but they are producing the product for maybe Nigeria. Now, what does that say? Because you would expect that,
oh, that is true.
If you prefer them to produce here so you can have your labor absorbed and people employed. So if they produce in Cote d'Ivoire or Nigeria and still sell here, technically they've not left Ghana. They've only moved their production base out of Ghana. So we lose on the employment side, but we still buy their products and they gain from us. So that is a double disadvantage for us, is it not?
Yeah, and yes, that is true. And we should realize that as the economic dynamics play out, the business model of both the manufacturers and the traders will change because their primary goal is to make profit. So a number of business models from their stage of origination, which even they signed on to the GIPC and other investment policies, and they took advantage of, have modified over the period as a result of the macroeconomic indicators, the phenomena I've described earlier that has happened. Some couldn't survive, some modeled it in a way to keep the business afloat. It gets to a stage, your model can be challenged as a result of the volumes. And when this happens, when the extent of taxation also increases, it gives room to a lot of tax evasion. And then further, there's a lot of smuggling because there's a market. Other models that are picking up, we realize that they seek to import finished goods. So some of the models are skewed to same finished product companies in Nigeria, in Ivory Coast, and they relocate some of their plants to keep their market share because they do not seek to lose the market share. Or look for another partner that can import semi-finished and they do some extent of value addition, which may be minimal. You can see it in the cement industries. And the sad aspect of what is happening, even now, it's in the flour industry. The flour industry now, which has over 800,000 metric ton capacity, is producing under 300,000. So the threat of the flour industry is also very high, and that you need to look into that. So I heard you mentioning the cement industry. Go to the flour industry. There's a lot of influx from Turkey, Russia, Ukraine, and unfortunately, you wonder they do not meet the certification to even come in, because by virtue of the Ghana Standards Authority, we have what we call the fortification mark on flour. You don't see it in the imported flour. So you ask, why is the customs officers even allow such But those are the ramifications of an austerity economy. And then when you're going through such events do occur, and we pray that the managers of the economy will look at such trends and then curb it in the back to restore confidence.
All right. I'll come back to you before we close on what can be done to strengthen domestic industrialization. But let me go to the Food and Beverage Association and speak to Mr. Awuni. Mr. Awuni, thanks for joining us. You've been complaining about high taxes for a long time. When I showed these charts and these case studies of companies leaving, I'm pretty sure you say, I told you so, Mr. Awuni. We don't seem to have Mr. Awuni. I'll come back to him. Let me go to Mr. Maximus Ametogo. Maximus, 3 of the companies listed in the chart I show are within the category of e-commerce: Glovo, Jumia Foods, and to an extent, Bet365. And particularly Glovo and Jumia Foods have a very similar story. Both came in 2021, they're leaving in 2024. What is the problem? What's happening with the e-commerce space? Is this a general challenge with the sector, or these are peculiar cases we should take as specific cases?
Yeah, thank you very much, Bernard. This particular one, I would say they are peculiar because Glovo, they focus much on food delivery. Jumia, they have different products that they serve or deliver to people. And Glovo Food is just one of it. So they just closed down their Glovo Food app. Meanwhile, the physical goods is still operational in Ghana. It's operational in several of the countries that they've shut down the food delivery, component of their service. The issue is that when it comes to the food delivery component of e-commerce, it's quite a high volume, low margin, space. So if there are some challenges in terms of customers' purchasing power, it will affect your profitability. And it's not something that is just local. Even in the US, where you have DoorDash and then Uber Foods controlling almost 90% of the food delivery, segment, they don't make profit. Really, they don't make profit. So they also have that challenge. So that is for the food delivery category. Now, when you come to Ghana, you realize that even the overview of e-commerce purchase in Ghana is been growing. Last year, we spent about $696 million on e-commerce in Ghana. That's last 2 years. Last year, we spent almost $900 million. And the food category was number one. We spent $172 million dollars on food category as a part of the e-commerce sector. But the delivery component is where the challenge is. So when you go to even the Jumia.com currently, they sell groceries and they sell all those other food products there. But it's the cooked food or the food delivery component that they are shutting down. Even the quarter before the quarter that they shut down Jumia Food in Ghana, as in the last year, December, they recorded a bigger growth in their gross merchandise volume. So that should tell you that there's a category of e-commerce that is growing in Ghana, but it's just the food delivery component, which is very competitive, where you need volumes, and because it has low margins too as well. So when you talk to the likes of Hubtel and the rest, they are making a bit of profit. They didn't. I'm not sure they made that huge investment as maybe Glovo or Jumia Food made, even though they have billboards across the country. Now, when you go to Nigeria, where Glovo Food is going, where Jumia Food has also shut down, they have a company called Chodek. Now, Chodek made a revenue of about $1.2 million, as a food delivery service provider, when Jumia was making almost $69 million in revenue, but they still shut down because they didn't see any profitability in that food delivery space. So that's even for Nigeria. So across the other market, I'm sure it's very, very similar. And for me, Global Living, of course, is part of the mix of food delivery service providers, but it's one in 1,000 or 100 other service providers, because you have the Okadas who deliver awache and beans and things for us. So for me, Of course, there are some.
But Maximus, Glovo and Jumia Foods are two of the largest multinational operators in the sector.
Yes.
Right? So you can say if Uber leaves Accra or if Bolt leaves Accra, there are still taxis that run. But it still says a lot about the sector from an international business investment perspective. Because people have been delivering food before Glovo came. If there were other significant global players left, then we can say that this is 1 in 1,000. But if you look at the fact that Glovo and Jumia together probably control 80% of that market, if they've left, then there's an issue. You get my point. It's not, unless you're telling me that there are other large players there who are still playing in the market, but because Glovo's own internal problems were there. But which other investor is there?
Yeah, so for me, I gave you, but the issue is that we don't even know the market share that they hold, because Jumia Food was there before they came. Almost the same, they came around, the same period. And we have Bolt Food. Bolt Food is still operating in Ghana. I don't know whether they are also going to shut down, but they are also in that market. Haptel is also in that market. We have other courier service companies also with that market. So we have a chain of other service providers doing the same thing. If we know the market that they control, then we can make a case and say, okay, 45% market shareholder is leaving Ghana. In Nigeria, Jumia Food was the biggest in Nigeria, but they've also shut down in Nigeria, right? But they have told who is making almost 1/60th of what Jumia was making, but they seem to be profitable according to their books. So there are other challenges for our market, but I won't say that the consumer purchasing power didn't affect that, because when some of us drive to go and eat, some of us, go and eat together with friends, once in a while we order food. That is a culture that we haven't bypassed yet. And the likes of Jumia and the Jumia Foods and Uber Foods, Uber Eats, and then Bolt Foods and the rest, they became, profitable during the COVID era, right? So people were staying at home. There was social distancing and all that. So people were ordering food. Now that the whole COVID thing is, dying down, people have started going out to eat their own food and stuff.
So you don't think there's a general? So you don't think there's a general decline in e-commerce per se? It's more the two companies and the way they structured their business. Because Haptel is still here, Bolt Food is still here. We shouldn't start announcing the decline of e-commerce just because of these two examples. We shouldn't do that.
It's a segment. The food delivery segment is a very, how do I call it? It's a curveball in that category when it comes to e-commerce. Right? People buy on Amazon. Like I said, we spent $172 million on food as an e-commerce category, 2023. Last 2 years, we spent $300 million on e-commerce. Last year, we spent almost $900 million. So the e-commerce space is growing. If you go on the Jumia current website, they still have Milo, milk, and all those food products there. They want to move to that space. They want to stop the food delivery. You want to buy breakfast, you want to buy some lunch or dinner. That's where they want to leave. That category, you need high volume and it's a small profit margin. So it's not a category that is very profitable when it comes to e-commerce. So any small factors can always affect you.
All right, I'll come back to you. Let me go to the Food and Beverage Association, Mr. John Awuni. Thanks for joining us, Mr. Awuni. Mr. Awuni, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear. Good evening.
Wonderful. You've been complaining about taxes for a long time. Now that I've shown 8 or 9 companies who are saying bye-bye to Ghana, will you say that the chickens have come home to roost? Is this what you've been complaining about all this while?
Well, absolutely, Bernard. We've talked about this on air and then even off air. Your very person have also complained and lamented on this over and over and over and over. And it appears that sometimes when you are talking about these issues, because you are not in government, you are not a policy, you are not a minister, They sometimes think that you are just an illiterate sitting somewhere and then talking, or you are talking about just for parochial interest. But in fact, a lot more have left the country than have announced, because I deal with most of these MDs all day in and day out. And I talk with them one-on-one. And many of them have open satellite offices in Côte d'Ivoire, open satellite offices in Togo. I may, because I don't want to put certain brands out, but there are some water or some other stuff that you drink, that other things that you buy now, that maybe is from Côte d'Ivoire, some is from Nigeria, some is from Togo. And this is real, that clearly the model that the finance minister, Honorable Ken Ofori-Atta, kept on started building was not meant for any economy to develop and stand and do well. Because clearly it was tax upon tax. Bernard, for instance, look at the issue of the growth and sustainability tax. You are saying that a company that poses losses for 5 years or more, you will calculate all whatever sale the fellow has made and then slap 5% or more on the person to pay. Bernard, if your business is run at a loss due to no fault of yours, and then you post your accounts as loss, and they now calculate and tell you that you must pay taxes on the losses, where is this then done at all? It is quite annoying. So at the end of the day, it's better for you to exit than for you to sit down, or you may even have to just cook the accounts and say that you have made a profit, yet you have made no profit, because it says that you cannot continue running at a loss. Which business wants to continue to post losses? But a tax like that was made by the government, and they are put in there. The growth and sustainability tax. This year, like this GRA, they've had a couple of meetings and all, and they have won all their offices. Any business that they've noticed that have posted accounts and they are in loss for the past 5 years, they must calculate all the monies and then let them pay 5% of the loss that they say they have made. And clearly, that is just very unacceptable. That is clearly unacceptable. And we think that the Ghanaian economy will suffer more because many businesses still want to live. And many of them still want to live. So the SGS, SG, the Jumia, the Global, and all that have left, they are not the only companies, Bernard. And they need to relook at the tax. Come, we are in an election year. If they exit the IMF, they need to relook at the tax. The model this economy is building on is not a model that will let private sector develop. It's not a model that will let employment create employment. It's not a model that will let the economy really expand. And so clearly, we need to relook at it. And as for those of us who make commentary in the media and all that, Bernard, you are not an illiterate. You are just not a media or a journalist. You are an intellectual. And so when you speak, they have to listen. When I speak, they have to listen. The current finance minister is my mate, was my colleague in the university. So if he could be a finance minister, I think that I could equally be, because I have qualification in development economics. So if I come and I'm speaking about something, they also need to pay attention to that. But they don't just write us off and say that no. So right now we have a whole lot of unemployment in our hands. We have businesses closing down. How can people prefer Togo to Ghana? How can they prefer? Even most companies that have existed in the country for years are now producing in Nigeria and coming in. How can that be? So Bernard, a lot is still going to happen, and a lot will happen until we re-engineer our tax system that will favor the private sector, that will honor the private sector, and that will give room for the private sector to make some savings in order to invest more, expand, and create jobs.
Well, thank you. We'll be back to wrap up with your closing comments. This is the point of view. We're talking about the departure of some companies from Ghana over difficult economic conditions. My guest, Dr. Amfreyim Dake, president of AGI, Maximus Ametogo, who is an e-commerce specialist, and John Awuni, who is the executive director of the Food and Beverage Association of Ghana. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. So point of view tonight is trying to understand the challenges facing manufacturing companies in particular and economy in general and why some of the key companies have left the country. Glovo, Nivea, Dark and Lovely, Jumia Foods, to an extent, Lipton Production. We also have Bet365 and a couple others which have left. Now, Dr. Eyim Dake, what are your top 2 recommendations to government to salvage the situation of the private sector and also to make Ghana an attractive investment destination?
Well, thank you, Ben.
Yes.
Look, my top two. This is a complex situation. My 2 proposals may not be sufficient, but it's a good start. To revamp this economy, one needs to really look at the macro stability. 2, for purposes of manufacturing in context, we must look out for the extent of imports. We are not suggesting the import is wrong. Let them meet the standards of the Food and Drugs Authority. Once they do, in terms of quality and pricing and in invoicing, the Ghanaian companies can compete. And then the next subject matter is the cost of power, aside that of tax and other related issues. So policy should come in quickly in the short term to look at how best you could regulate your imports line. The extent of imports coming by virtue of the tax burden and other associated burdens are now allowing the market, which has already been established in the market. Products are being smuggled in, and I'll just give you a key example as the flour market. You can go into the beverage market, you go into the oils that Avnash and Unilever and the rest are producing. They are under threat. And therefore, if you don't bring in policy and regulate them in the short term to give confidence back to the market and the producers that your market is secured, produce and expand, and we will tax you to match the gap, we are in difficulties. So my first intervention is micro related issues. And the quick intervention, deliberately building local enterprises to fill the gap. As you mentioned with the example of Glovo, in the e-commerce space, the product concept or the business context has been shared. As others move out, others will fill in the space. So Ghanaian enterprises will stand up to that, and they will need deliberate, conscious effort. Some might be hand-holding because they might not have all the capacity, but technical support in elected priority areas that will lead to the balance of payments. So look at products that are being imported a lot, that are affecting your BOP. How then do you hold the hands of such enterprises or entrepreneurs deliberately for the next short term, 2, 3, 4 years? You can recover easily within the period of the IMF, because the IMF period is a transitional period for stability. So as IMF seeks to support you on your BOP, use that gap and the space for the debt provision and projections, or the debt restructuring, that's the word, to hold Ghanaian companies and entrepreneurs deliberately to fill in the gap within this transitionary period. The transitionary period is flexible. It gives you room for such intervention once you identify it and negotiate it properly. Then Ghanaian companies can be held to fill in this space, and then the BOP will be reversed in perpetuity, and we proceed. And the structure of the economy then begins to change. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you very much, Dr. Eyim Dake, President of AGI. Let's come to Maximus. You feel the e-commerce sector is pretty strong. You showed me a chart for e-commerce consumer goods categories, and whether it's electronics or fashion or food, there seems to be strong growth. I don't know if I have the chart to show. In fact, for electronics is $150 million, fashion 160, food is 172, beverages 24, dry hardware 35, and these are all dollars and millions, all the way through to eyewear, luxury goods, and so. So your argument based on this chart is that the sector is actually pretty strong.
Yes, for the numbers that you have is quite strong, but it's the category, the food delivery category, that you have the challenge there. And that's why we have a lot of people within that space choking it. So they are all sharing the same cake. That's why Jumia wants to stick to their physical goods. And then we have the likes of Aftel doing a mix of it. You have other, e-commerce platforms doing the same thing. And it's about modeling. E-commerce, you have a whole chain of things: logistics, supply chain, pricing, the product. And Bernard, there's another component of the challenge that we have to look at for. The product that are being sold, are they made in Ghana? Because if you go to Makola, you are chasing out, Chinese people for selling products, in Ghana. There's an e-commerce component that you must look at for. And I was excited about the statement the previous speaker made about having local policy so that they can handhold some of the local industry players in that space. So we can, sell made in Ghana products, have Jumia sell a lot of made in Ghana products, so we can balance things out. But the food deliveries segment, e-commerce, is a curveball globally, is everywhere, right? People, it is not a profitable market. Even Amazon buying Whole Foods is more about fresh food, healthy food concept. They are not focusing on that as a big market segment.
Wonderful. So we can salvage things and get things done. Thank you, Maximus Ametogo. Let me end with John Awuni from Fabag. He's been talking a lot about business environment. John, so in summary, would you say it's taxes? That's the number one problem.
Thank you very much. The challenge that this economy has is not a production, the challenge of poor production by local manufacturers and then all that. You see, when we do that, it means that we are not even having a proper focus of the problem. The entire challenge is that cost of doing business is very high, whether it is imported item or local items, the cost is very high. As the cost is very high on one leg, on the other leg, inflation is increasing, exchange rate losses, and all that goes to affect the final cost of the product. And disposable income of the consumer is also dwindling by the day. Just a couple of weeks back, we had an exchange rate 12.5 to $1. Now we are down to 14.4 or so. That is massive for a business to and we don't even know what it will be by Friday. So the clear thing is that at the end of the day, if some businesses speculate, they will speculate and increase their prices. So then clearly we are having issue of poor patronage, low patronage, even to the extent where they are talking about whole businesses have and protect local manufacturers. Okay, ECG is a monopoly. Yet, per your presentation, the demand for ECG has even reduced. So my issue is that consumers are not buying. If a bank is exiting, consumers are not having money, excess money to save. So the bank is not getting savings. And and from that, they can use to do their business. So they have to leave. The other businesses, I have a food business, a business that could employ over 100 people. I am currently employing about 12, 15 people. So I could also equally exit if I have the opportunity. So the issue is patronage. The issue is high cost of goods, high cost of living. And the high cost of living translates negatively on the business because we cannot produce more. I could cite up a lot of businesses that I talk with, and they say we cannot produce, sales have reduced. Tell them, let them remove this tax, let them remove this tax, let them remove this tax, so that volume makes more sense than just selling just a little for you to pay higher taxes. So the government, in conclusion, the government must review their tax system. Number two, they must look at the cost of living. The cost of living for the ordinary Ghanaian is extremely, extremely high, very unbearable. And that is having massive impact on corruption because every Ghanaian must do one thing or the other in order to survive because your salary cannot really take you home. It cannot take you through the month. And that is massive. And so the government must look at this thing very seriously. If demand increases, ultimately supply will increase. So it is not about creating monopolies for a certain group of businesses. It is about creating conducive business environment. And I'm saying that the high cost of electricity does not create conducive business environment. The massive taxes, the VATs, the growth and sustainability tax, the carbon emissions tax, on all those taxes we can keep on talking about. Doesn't create any conducive business environment. If the level of taxation over 50% of import duties at the port is not enough protection for domestic producers, I don't know whatever protection we are looking for.
All right.
Again.
Thank you very much, Mr. John Awuni. Always great talking to you, President of the Food and Beverage Association, FABAG of Ghana. We also had Maximus Ametogo, an e-commerce specialist, CEO of Pop Out, and Dr. Humphrey Eyim Dake, who is the president of the Association of Ghana Industries. We'll be talking about companies existing in Ghana, the challenges facing the business environment. Let's keep working hard. Let's keep making Ghana work. My name is Bernard Avile. We'll see you next time. Have a good night. Bye-bye.